Grimes continues to be just about the only bright spot surrounding this Philadelphia 76ers team as they limp to the finish line, but Georges Niang managed to ruffle up the new guard's feathers by talking some chatter during the matchup between the Sixers and Hawks there. I want to break down why I think this is fair game on all parties, why I think it is quite entertaining what Georges Niang said, and how Niang himself showed more fight in that specific altercation than we've seen from this Sixers franchise in months to this point. Now, to get right into things here and set the stage, there was a lot of going back and forth throughout between Niang and Quentin Grimes, and frankly, I love to see it, that we haven't seen entertaining basketball in quite some time. We haven't seen intensity, this competitive nature to show out in this style, so shout out to these guys. And to dive into exactly what was said here, we do have from Niang directly the leaked audio of Georges Niang trash talking Quentin Grimes. So you can listen to the video, get kind of the full effects of this, the full clarity of it. There is more than just these quotes here, but Niang saying, quote, "Next year, you're going to be a role player, just like in New York, just like in Detroit, just like in Dallas." And Grimes gets him back saying, "I'm going to get you every time I play." Niang says, "Joel here, you're in the corner. Tyrese is here, you're in the corner." And Grimes said, "You ain't even going to play in the playoffs," which I don't think is the best comeback at this point in time, considering he is playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, who have no business being in the playoff conversation at this current point in time. But nonetheless, do think it is fair game on all parties. Do love that all went down, and do think it says a lot about both of these players. Georges Niang, we know exactly who he is at this point, that we've seen him in a Sixers uniform, the charm that he brings to the table, and to give a little respect to Niang, that he balled in that game yesterday, that I thought he played very well. The Hawks beating the Sixers 132-119. Quentin Grimes continuing to play at his high level, 26.6 assists. This now makes it 8 straight games that he scored 25 plus points. And there's Georges Niang, not too far below him, 20 points on 5 of 8 3-point shooting. And I will add, in one of those made 3-pointers, immediate technical for just talking all kinds of trash to the bench. Once again, shout out to Georges Niang, man. And for Quentin Grimes specifically, I like that he's showing some bite here. That probably the most difficult thing to evaluate in the entirety of the second half of the season is how does Quentin Grimes actually project when we're talking about conducive to winning basketball? That obviously this season is off the rails. We've seen 21 different players start games for the Sixers team. We've seen 46 different lineup combinations for the starting lineup, 46 different versions of that, and the season isn't even over yet. That there is not any sort of conversation about this building. It's just kind of a limping to the finish line and get set for next year. There's still plenty of big picture questions that need to be addressed. How healthy is Joel Embiid? What is the plan that's going to go down? What is the future of Paul George? Those are all things that have to wait until the offseason, but in the meantime, the NBA waits for no one, and these games continue. Now, with that being said, it's impressive the things that Quentin Grimes are doing on the floor. I get like this isn't translating to winning basketball, but the reality is he is scoring 25 plus points at the NBA level against legitimate NBA talent on a regular basis. And it kind of hit at his stats on the overall year that this for the season across the start with the Dallas Mavericks as well, that he's averaging 13.8 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 48% from the field, and 39.3% from three. The instincts as a shooter continue to become more clear. Some of these catch and shoot looks I've been really impressed with. This is a guy that is just answering every single question. Now, with that being said there, I have seen some of the concerns in the comments and just in general about, do the Sixers need to shut this guy down? Is he playing up his market that it's going to be too high, that it is harmful to the Sixers to have a chance to re-sign him? For that conversation specifically there, my short answer would be probably not. That in reality, when looking around the NBA, I find it pretty hard to believe that a team is going to take a chance on him and give like a legitimate restricted free agent offer. The only team that's really in a position to make that happen is the Brooklyn Nets. You can look at the Utah Jazz to squint, move around some stuff and make things happen and probably carve something out. But in reality, I think it's pretty unlikely that any team offers more than the kind of full mid-level there, around the $14 million line for Quentin Grimes. I think for the Sixers, you should be totally comfortable matching that. And I think there's a strong case to be made that Grimes is worth more than that based on how he's performed. We'll see how ultimately that shakes out, but I would just say it's not something that I'm super worried about happening. Now, with that being said, we did see him get shut down ahead of this New Orleans Pelicans game, which is a must-lose from a Sixers perspective. And the whole injury report here that Tyrese Maxey remains out with his finger and back issues. Quentin Grimes with rest. He did play last night. It is the second half of a back-to-back, so hopefully the NBA can't investigate too heavily there. But of course, Kelly Oubre Jr. continues to miss. Kyle Lowry continues to miss. Andre Drummond continues to miss. Lonnie Walker remains out with this concussion here. This doesn't even include Paul George, Joel Embiid, Jared McCain. The list seems to go on and on with this Sixers team here. Now, with all that being said, we are winding to a close on the season, and it is all about keeping these lottery odds open. And to hint on, to set the stage leading up to this Pelicans game, which, by the way, you guys might have seen the end of by the time that you are watching them, that you can see in the lottery odds, this is a big one. The Pelicans with the 4th worst record in the NBA, the Sixers with the 5th worst record in the NBA. Now, with that being said, the Sixers are going to need some help if they're going to catch the Pelicans, man. They're 19-53 on the season, meaning there's a 4.5 game gap between where the Sixers are and where the Pelicans are. I will note the Brooklyn Nets are still tied with the Sixers with that record. They also play tonight at the time of recording, so that is a matchup that matters. That's probably the team that there's a more legitimate hope for making sure they stay below, and it is a notable leap from that 5th or 6th best odds. You can see it in the top 4. And the number 1 overall percentage there, that between that 5th seed, and obviously it's a little hard to distinguish right now as they have the Nets and Sixers exactly split here. For what it's worth, if by some miracle at the end of the season they finish with the exact same record, the tiebreaker is literally a coin flip there, that they just, randomize, flip a coin and see what happens. I don't love that that's the outcome of it, but that's just kind of what to be prepared for, I would guess. But basically, their odds of physically keeping the pick, meaning it landing within the top 6, increases from about 46% to about 64% if they are the 5th worst record in contrast to the 6th worst record. In any way that you slice it, and by the way, if they were by some miracle able to pass the Pelicans, that number goes over to 81% here. So that would obviously be ideal, and they do need to lose to the Pelicans directly tonight to have a chance at catching that. There's still about 10 games left for each team, 11 or 12 in a lot of cases here. So the season is not concluded. The seedings are not set. And honestly, the race to the bottom has been more competitive than the playoff races. That you're seeing the lengths teams like the Toronto Raptors and Utah Jazz are going to make sure that they are in the best spot possible to lose that game. It's something I've never really seen before. This is some more egregious examples of tanking that I can honestly ever remember. I don't remember any teams pulling their starters in the 4th quarter or with 5 minutes to go when it's a tie game, or not playing players. So again, I've seen Lauri Markkanen start a game, score 16 points in the first half, and then just be a healthy scratch in the second. Walker Kessler in that exact same game was active, no injury report, fully dressed in uniform, and just never subbed into that game. That is the kind of stuff that's going around the league. Toronto is incredibly guilty of it right now. So the point being here, it's kind of out of the Sixers' control. All these teams are doing the same thing. It's going to come down to where those ping pong balls fall. Now, with a lot of that noted here, and I did want to give one more love to Georges Niang because he is a guy that has consistently defended the Sixers. We've seen him after the Ben Simmons situation, kind of speaking his mind here. That is who he is. I think it is fair game here. But it did kind of strike me a little different seeing Quentin Grimes get in that mix there. And the thing that I want to note, and I haven't figured out how to properly work this in or bring it up or whatever, I haven't heard awesome things about Quentin Grimes behind the scenes, or particularly his relationship within the locker room. I will say a Knicks kind of source over there is pretty bullheaded on why he ended up being traded out of New York, was beefing with Dante DiVincenzo, or at least not having a good feeling within the locker room. And I'll also note, have also heard that from back in college when he transferred from Kansas to Houston. That's sort of the root of that decision here. He wasn't being guaranteed enough as far as a role, or making sure that his roster is protected as they continue to bring in these top recruits and looking over his shoulder type of thing. Now, with that said here, I think he ended up in the right spot in Houston, that I think he was a far better match for them as a basketball fit, that I think he embodies that organization, the principles they lean on. Shout out to Kelvin Sampson and that entire unit there playing next to Marcus Sasser, that it worked out for Quentin Grimes. But it is a little concerning or strange why a player of his talent, who has shown legitimate flashes at the NBA level, certainly here in Philadelphia, it's been better than any place before, but nonetheless, those moments have been there for Quentin Grimes. Why has he played on 4 different NBA teams to this point? It does bring up a little bit of a question there. And ultimately, the Sixers at least should have a far better feel for what this guy's like on a day-to-day basis, what it is behind the scenes. And I do think that you can kind of mask that within an organization when you have players that are positive vibe, like Jared McCain, like Tyrese Maxey. And in general, even though some of the top dogs in Joel Embiid and James Harden and Ben Simmons, you can kind of throw critiques in that other direction here, I think they've done a pretty good job of bringing in positive voices and personalities into this organization as a whole, but just something that I did want to note there. So ultimately, not anything that I think they're super to be worried about with Quentin Grimes, and money always talks, and that's what it's going to come down to for whether or not he's back, but just something to keep in mind, and I'm curious if we get any sort of stories about that moving forward as it pertains to the Sixers. But in the short term, need the Sixers to lose the New Orleans Pelicans tonight. Do hope, or am grateful, that Georges Niang gave us a little bit of buzz, a little bit of talk, a little bit of excitement watching the Sixers game. It's been several games since I've felt any sort of excitement watching this team. So shout out to him. Hope he's doing well down in Atlanta. And did want to point out, man, This dude can play. Like, I think Georges Niang, he is a no scrub, man. Look at him down in Atlanta right now. 13.4 points per game, shooting 42.3% from beyond the three-point arc on 6.8 shots per game. That is legitimate, good quality, high volume. And across the 2 seasons that he spent in Philadelphia there, averaged 8.7 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists there, and still shot the ball well. 40.2% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. So we'll always have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for Georges Niang. I get he's not a championship contender or winning basketball player, that he does have defensive issues. He does talk too much. He did trip a dude on the bench in the playoffs for the Sixers team. He's not perfect. But shout out to George, man. I love that he kind of stirred the pot there and gave us a little something to talk about. And appreciate each and every one of you guys for listening to my thoughts on that as well. So as always, appreciate you guys for tuning in. We are almost to the finish line of this dreadful season, truly the worst Sixers season of my entire lifetime here, but we're almost there. So a lot of exciting stuff brewing on the horizon in the offseason, and we want each and every one of you a part of that. So make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, your thoughts below. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.